Hi, this is Frank Wagner with SCT, and I'm here to talk to you today about an extra mild antibacterial hand soap that we've been working on. And we're pleased to share this with you today. We're going to talk about a few things and about how the ingredients all came to be chosen for it and why we chose some of those for it. So we made this to be high frequency friendly, and as everyone knows, COVID-19 has people washing their hands on a very, very frequent basis, which is a very good thing. And in fact, if I had my druthers, I hope that this is something that continues, so that people remember this, because you know, most things from the common cold to the flu are transferred via the hand. So even after we've beaten COVID-19, it would be great if everybody continues to wash their hands, and you know, perhaps we get less colds and certainly see less flu instances of the flu. So this formula should you know, be good, I think, moving on to the future. But we did formulate it with ingredients that are bio-derived. They're also very mild, things that are less disruptive to skin barriers, and then we've also included some things in there that should help to repair that skin barrier, you know, if it after it has been damaged. So next we're going to talk a little bit about the actual ingredients. And so here you have a little snippet of what is actually in this formula from a percentage standpoint. And so as you can see there, we have 4 of our ingredients in there: Sopalteric CS, Sopalteric CBS, Techmine 350, Sopal Quat Rice. And then we have a couple of ingredients that aren't ours. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about our ingredients on the upcoming slides, and why exactly we chose each of these, and what their exact function is in the formula. But here, let's go ahead and talk real quickly about the other ingredients and why they are here. The first I'm going to talk about, because it's really one of the defining factors of the formula, is the benzethonium chloride or benzalkonium chloride. These products are the antibacterial here. They're kind of, you could say, the workhorse from that perspective. And if you recall, these have really been the 2 products of choice since things like triclosan fell out of favor, but also have been banned by the FDA. That actually is going to dictate a number of different things about this formula. First and foremost is that you cannot include an anionic. So if you look through this ingredient list, you're not going to see any anionics in there, and that is because if one was present, it would interact with the benzethonium or benzalkonium chloride to either flocculate or cause a haze issue. Ultimately, it would deactivate the antibacterial nature of the quat, the biocidal quat in this case. And so none of those are there, and so all of our ingredients were chosen to be compatible with that ingredient. The next ingredient, the PEG 150 distearate, is a non-ionic, and that is used as the thickener. So because this is, you know, principally a sulfate-free formula, and if you've ever formulated a sulfate-free formula, you know you're not going to get them to salt thicken or do, you know, many of the main or primary means. The PEG 150, you know, being non-ionic, is going to have very good compatibility with the overall system. It's actually going to thicken it pretty efficiently, and it's not going to interact at all with our biocidal quats, which is really what we're after here. The use of polymers is certainly possible, although I would say that you have to be very careful, because a lot of polymers that are out there are actually anionic in nature, and so again, you could run into issues with your benzethonium or benzalkonium chloride. That would be a problem. The other ingredients that we have here, you know, obviously there's water. That's going to be the main carrier. Your fragrance and dyes, you know, that's pretty standard stuff. We did preserve this with a Kathon type product, although I would say also that, you know, there's probably a fair bit of choice that you could have in doing that. in the preservative that you did use. One last note on the PEG 150 distearate is that if someone was doing something and they did not want to have to heat this product, so if you know PEG 150 distearate, you know that you're going to have to do a hot process. If one simply left that out, you could very easily put this thing together and deliver it through a pump foamer that would be every bit as nice without being thick. Obviously through a pump foamer you want it as thin as possible. And so that would be one way to actually accomplish two things. You're simplifying the formula to some degree, and also you would cut a little bit of cost out of it because now you're not having to put that additional ingredient in there because its only function is, again, thickening. So let's talk a little more in depth about some of the physical properties of this product. So on the left-hand side, you see we have the inky name. So the water's first, followed by sultaine, followed by our Sopalteric CS, our amine oxide, the PEG 150, so on and so forth. You do see that we have the active ingredients in there at a fairly standard level of 0.2%. So again, that's the benzethonium or benzalkonium. And the final properties of this should be that you're going to get a clear liquid. So if you've included the PEG 150 distearate, you're going to get around 2,000 to 4,000 centipoise. And that's pretty standard for a hand soap. Typically you don't go much higher than that just because, if you were to say go up to 8,000 to 10,000 and where you're getting more into body wash, maybe even shampoo range, it just gets harder to dilute. So, when you think about when you're putting this onto your hand and you're actually using physical activity to spread it around, I'm sure everybody's used a cheap soap before, like that pink stuff that's usually used at gas stations. You'll note that a lot of times most of it ends up in the sink, and so that's why we've chosen this viscosity range to kind of be in that sweet spot of dilutability. The pH range is 5.5 to 7, and again, that was actually not chosen by accident. We're going to talk a little bit more about why we chose that pH range in an upcoming slide. But suffice to say, it was actually to provide some mildness. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then from a solids perspective, this runs around 8 to 10%, which that's probably higher than what you would see certainly for a dollar store. A dollar store stuff tends to run maybe 4 to 6%. This would be a little closer to a standard hand soap, that would be used, that you'll get a fair bit of foam from and good lather, with a nice afterfeel. And then we list the RCI or renewable carbon index, which is we're basically counting the number of carbons in a given molecule. And then we say this percentage came from some natural or renewable source, and this percentage came from some non-renewable source or the synthetic source. So as you can see there, at an average it's about 76%, which is pretty decent for a mixture of various products. So if you want to see the actual formula, or you want a more detailed version of the formula, you can actually go to our landing page on the web, and it's going to have much of the same detail as we've provided here. And then also, if you just want a direct link to the formula, you can use the link over here below, and that'll take you directly to that. So let's take a few minutes to talk about each of the ingredients, the SCT ingredients, I should say, and why we chose them. So the Sopalteric CS, we chose that one basically for one formula function, and that was as a mildness agent. So if you're familiar with the CS product, it's a unity of amphoteric and sultaine technology. So we take a raw material from a amphoacetate and a raw material from a sultaine. We combine the two, and we get basically the Sopalteric CS. It inherits a extreme mildness from its amphoteric side, and it actually is proposition 65 due to its sultaine side. It's actually used or very ideal for use in things like sulfate-free shampoos, bath products, and a wide variety of things because of its mildness. As I mentioned, it's Prop 65 free, but it's also preservative free as well, so there is a fair bit of flexibility, and it does have a renewable carbon index of 79%. So I mentioned mildness before in the pH range, and so we're going to talk a little bit more about that right now. We did some Zyme testing. So if you're familiar with Zyme testing, that is a yellow corn protein, which is very similar to keratin protein that's found in the skin and hair. The way Zyme testing is done is basically surfactants are introduced to the protein, and you basically measure how much of that is solubilized. And so the more Zyme that is solubilized, the more irritating that it is. We do normalize these scores where we compare it to sodium lauryl sulfate. That is kind of the standard there, and it gets normalized against that. So here you'll see that we've tested it at a number of different pHs. So this is the Sopalteric CS, and basically what you see in a nutshell is below a pH of 7, the amount of Zyme that is solubilized drops off pretty dramatically. And so when I mentioned earlier why we chose the pH range that we did, basically this was the data that we were relying on to make that decision. So you see below pH of 7, next to or very, very little Zyme is actually being solubilized, which indicates very good mildness. Here's some other data where we've compared it to, again, you'll see the sodium lauryl sulfate by itself, that it tends to be very, very irritating. We also compared it to disodium peg-12 dimethicone sulfosuccinate, which is our SCT 735. That is actually an extremely mild product by itself as well. It is used a great deal in anti-acne. And that's primarily because of its mildness. So we wanted to compare that to that just to see, and what you see there is that the Sopalteric CS actually scored pretty much on par with that, which was a little bit of a surprise to us. We knew it was mild. We didn't think it would be more mild or as mild as the SCT 735, but lo and behold, that was what we found. As you see at the top there, this one was measured at a pH of 5.8, so round about maybe just a little bit higher than normal skin pH. The next ingredient is the Sopalteric CBS, and so we've chosen that because it's a mildness agent, and it's actually also the primary foamer in this particular system. It is a Cocamidopropyl Hydroxysultaine, so if you're familiar with our Sopalteric CHS, the difference between the CBS and the CHS is the CBS is a fatty acid derived product, and actually a fairly special fatty acid wherein it's stripped and hydrogenated. So when we say stripped, we've removed some of the lower chain cuts, particularly the C8 and the C10, almost completely. We've also completely hydrogenated the thing, so there's no unsaturated in there. And the reason we do this is that this product is going to give you a little bit greater foam and a little bit greater viscosity thickening, particularly when you don't have a primary foamer like a sulfate in there. This one really shines for that, whereas the CHS is derived from directly from a coconut oil. It's going to be a little less so. That's more the mainline product. There is a little bit of an economic benefit to the CHS for this versus the CBS, and that's just due to the amount of refinement that has to be done to get to it. That being said, as I mentioned, we choose it here we don't have a primary anionic available to us, and so we want something that's going to help us give the highest amount of foam and also the highest amount of viscosity build without too many other additives. It is also preservative free and has a renewable carbon index of 75%. The next ingredient is Techmine 350. It is being used in the formula as a foam booster and for foam stability. And so if you think about where amine oxides are typically used, the main thing I think about is liquid dish detergent. Every one of those has amine oxide in there, and the reason for that is that it is a wonderful foam booster and is also very good for foam stability. And so that's why we've included this one here. To just help maintain that lather. So as we mentioned before, the other ingredients are contributing to mildness and foaming, and this one is going to be contributing to that foam sticking around for a while and actually helping to boost itself up. It is another preservative-free product, and it does have a renewable carbon index of 76%. So all of these are quite high, up in the 70s. We also like this ingredient because it's very compatible with the biocidal quat, so the benzoathonium chloride, benzalkonium chloride. It is not going to interact with that. In fact, this being a very good wetting agent, it's actually going to work with that to make the quat work better. The last ingredient that we've included is our Sopal Quat Rice, and so we've included that as for a conditioning agent, also damage control or repair, and also as a helper quat. As skin gets damaged, it actually becomes slightly negatively charged, and so this is a cationic agent, and so it's going to help to gravitate to those areas of damaged skin and actually deposit some of that protein, some of that rice protein that we've grafted to this quaternary thing and help protect the skin. This is commonly used for damaged hair, for strengthening hair, things like natural body washes and also sulfate-free formulas. But again, here we were more after something that was going to help to mitigate damage that's been done to the skin, because again, this is a high frequency product, and also it does provide a little bit of a helper quat benefit, wherein because it is also a quaternary item as well, in addition to the biocidal quats, it's going to work well with those and actually help to enhance the system overall from that perspective. Preservative in this product is benzoic acid, and the renewable carbon index is actually quite high, 95 to 100%. We do list it as a range just because your protein is technically a polymer, and so it actually does get to be somewhat difficult to add up all the number of carbons that you get from that. So we do list it as a range. We thank you for your time, and we hope you find this very useful. Again, there are resources available to you on the website, or you can feel free to reach out to your favorite SCT rep, or you can even give me a call. Frankly, in the days of COVID, which we hope will end soon at some point, I tend to be at home a lot, and I tend to be rather bored. So give me a call. Thank you.